Say that again? Yeah, I did it once. I finally had to tell a person, I just cannot understand you, you know. And so, but anyway, wouldn't it be nice, you know, all your instruction manuals would be a whole lot thinner, wouldn't they? They wouldn't have 4 or 5 languages in them. You know, a lot of the stuff you get in the mail, my insurance stuff has all sorts of stuff in other languages, you know. The mail would be cheaper, you know, and you'd never feel weird about somebody talking a foreign language around you because there wouldn't be any foreign languages. Wouldn't that be great? You know, there wouldn't be a foreign language. You know, everybody would be speaking English and life would be a lot easier and people would probably get along a whole lot better, wouldn't you think? You know, and, you know, it really wouldn't have to be English, you know. If we all spoke the same language, whatever it was, we wouldn't know about English. So, okay, if we just all spoke the same language, you know, wouldn't it just be a whole lot easier here? Think how much easier outreach around the world would be if everybody spoke the same language. You know, missionaries wouldn't have to spend 3 years in language training or more, you know, just trying to learn the language. You could just show up and just start talking to everybody, you know. You know, with no language barrier, guess how well the international relationships would be because we all understand each other. Wouldn't that work? You know? Or would that really work? South America and Central America all speak Spanish, and gosh, there's constant revolutions and everything else. Venezuela is a total disaster right now. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that doesn't really solve everything, be able to speak the same language here, you know? You know, all the rioting that's going on in our country are by people that all speak English. Okay, is that producing any peaceful results right there? You know, so history shows that, you know, just because we all speak the same language, that doesn't mean we're going to agree to do what is right. And that's exactly what our story today is going to be about. When the Bible stories you wanted to hear, we're going to look at the Tower of Babel, you know. So if you'd like to turn to Genesis, we'll be getting into Genesis chapter 11. You know, after the flood, we just finished Noah and stuff. After the flood, God told Noah and his family in Genesis 9:7, as for you, here's your new instructions, people, be fruitful and multiply, populate the earth abundantly and multiply in it. So there's our instructions. You know, it's the original instructions he gave Adam and Eve. Fill the earth with people, you know. Be fruitful, multiply, and populate the whole earth. So Genesis chapter 10 gives the genealogies of Noah's 3 sons. And so we see that they're being fruitful and multiplying, that's for sure. As you go down through the genealogy, it's in chapter 10. It follows all 3 of the different sons. And they got that part down. But are they spreading out to populate the whole earth? You know, because that's part of God's instruction too. Isn't it amazing that if you ever catch yourself doing this? You know, you excuse yourself for not doing one thing God says because I do this. Why are you getting on me? I'm not doing that. I do this. We excuse our disobedience because we're obedient in another area. And this is what they're doing. They're being fruitful and multiplying, but they're not spreading out across the earth like God said for them to do here. You know, that's part of the instruction here. Genesis chapter 11, verse 1, we see here, picking up the story here. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. Okay? So, you know, the Hebrew here, I like the Hebrew literally. It says that the whole earth was of one lip. Was of one lip and one set of words. Well, so before the flood, everybody spoke the same language, and after the flood, of course, everybody still spoke the same language, especially since it's just one family of people. They even spoke the same dialect. So, you know, they have one language after the flood. And so the generations after Noah, they'd all still be speaking the same language. What language? Who knows what language? I mean, it's amazing the things people want to speculate and spend a lot of time and write a lot of pages and books about on questions like that. What language did they speak? It doesn't tell us what language they speak, but there are those that say, well, it had to be Hebrew. You know, it had to be Hebrew because that's what they spoke before the flood. And you're like, really? That's what they spoke before the flood? And they go, yeah, because you notice all the given names of everybody that means something in Hebrew. All those names that they have, you know, means something. They're just Hebrew words that they have assigned names to, like Cain and Abel. Those are just Hebrew words, and so they had to have spoken Hebrew. Really, you know, the land of Nod. That's where Cain went after he killed his brother, was the land of wanderings. That's all Nod means, wandering. And so you can tell by the pre-flood stories that they spoke Hebrew because they were using Hebrew words. Everyone's personal names mean things. But, that doesn't really prove that Hebrew was definitely the language before the flood. I mean, whatever language they spoke, God's revealing it to be recorded in the Hebrew language. So, of course, everything's going to be in Hebrew, isn't it? You could translate the same name. Abel, his name means breath, by the way. That's all Abel means, breath. When you're like, this is my son, breath. So if God had revealed the word of God in English, we would be reading the story about breath and spear instead of Cain and Abel. If he had revealed it in English, but since it was revealed in Hebrew, it's Cain and Abel. Well, actually, it's Abel and Cain. Abel's breath, spear is Cain. Okay, so that doesn't really prove, just because we use Hebrew names in Hebrew account, that doesn't prove they spoke it. So we don't know what the original language was, but everybody spoke it. Whatever it was, everybody spoke it. We come to verse 2 here in Genesis 11. And it came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. So these descendants of Noah here, they journeyed to a plain in the land that became known as Shinar, because it wasn't Shinar before they got there, because there was nobody there to name it something. So they got there, and eventually it becomes known as the land of Shinar. So if they're telling this story way after it happened, where was all this taking place? Well, it's in Shinar, because it wasn't called Shinar then, but that's what it's called today, so we're calling it Shinar. So it's the land of Shinar. Now, where's the land of Shinar? Everybody real familiar with that? Okay. It's the land where eventually the Babylonians are going to be. They're in the land of Shinar, where the Babylonians are going to occupy that. And so this group of descendants of Noah, they journeyed to this valley, this area, and it's called Shinar. We know where it is, all right? So how long after Noah got off the ark did these people travel to this land anyway? Because it just sounds like that way down the road, one day, this happened here. Well, let's figure out. Because if you go back into Genesis 10 and read all that genealogy, which we usually sleep through when we get to those genealogies, don't we? We don't really pay attention to them a whole lot because they're all funny names. We keep going. Okay. All right, let's go. Genesis 10:6. The sons of Ham were Cush and Mizraim and Put and Canaan. Now, Ham was one of Noah's sons. Remember that? He's one of their sons. You got Ham, Japheth, and Shem. Okay. So now we got the sons of Ham. You got Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan are the first new generation on the earth. So this would be these guys got off, Noah and Ham got off the ark, then they had kids, okay? And we're not going to follow the other sons' kids, we're just going to follow Ham's kids. Do you recognize these four names, by the way? Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Cushites, the land of Put. Canaan, you may not recognize Mizraim, because Mizraim is Egypt. That's how Egypt is spelled and pronounced, and that is Hebrew for Egypt, is Mizraim. Cush, of course, is another name of another people group. So is Put and Canaan. We all know about Canaan. Cush is sometimes called Kish. He's the father of the Cushites who lived where? In the modern-day Ethiopia area. If we looked at my world map, the Cushites were in Ethiopia. Mizraim is, of course, Egypt. Put is modern-day Libya, right to the west of Egypt. And then, I shouldn't have to tell you where Canaan, the land of the Canaanites is. I mean, if we have to tell you that one, shame on you, okay? The Canaanites, okay? The promised land is the Canaanites, all right? So we get to verse 8 through 10. Now Cush became the father of Nimrod. He became a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, and therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Okay, and if we continue on to the next verse, we're also going to see that Nimrod also founded Nineveh. How about that? So we got Babel, capital of Babylon, and also Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrians, which tell you that the Babylonians and Assyrians were all one family of people at one time. Anyway, so Nimrod here. Now, Nimrod is the second generation born in the New World. So Noah and Ham, the guys get off the ark. Ham has these four sons. One of those sons has Nimrod. Second generation is Nimrod. And what did Nimrod do there? He began Babel. Now we know who's leading this down to the land of Shinar, to build this city and make this tower is Nimrod. This is not that far along, not that long after the ark came and settled on the earth and everybody got off it and the new life started all over again. And so once they got to this plain, it looked like a good place to stay. And since we know where Babylon is, it's between the Tigris and Euphrates River. It's a great farming land. I mean, man, you couldn't beat this. Hey, this is a great place to set up shop, and let's just all live right here. That's the plan there. And so we know who it is. It's Nimrod's leading this whole group here. All right, so we get to verse 3 of chapter 11. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us make for ourselves a name. Otherwise we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." Now here's the first mention anywhere of them building a city. You know, it's not that long since they've been on the ark. Probably take a while to build enough people to make a city for all of us to stay in. Anyway, and we know it's Babel is the place that's going to be. And what do they want to do? Okay, they want to build a city so we can all live here together happily, and they want to build a tower. You know, and that's not the tower is not the important part of the story. Everybody built camps on the tower, especially children's Sunday school, and they always draw this giant thing that's going way up in the sky. All right, the tower is not really that big of an issue here. Okay, why are they building a city in a tower? Why did they say? They tell you why they're doing it. Come, let us build ourselves a city and tower who will reach heaven. Let us make a name for ourselves. Okay, that we to build this beautiful city and this tower, and we're all going to live here forever, and everybody after us is going to live here forever, and everybody's going to talk about who built this forever. Let's build a name for ourselves, plus, and even worse, what? Lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the earth. Let's not spread out and fill the earth like God said do. Let's stay right here and build a city and make a name for ourselves and serve ourselves is what that really means. Is let's put ourselves front and center. Let's give glory to, let's make something glorious for us, not bring glory to God. That's the plan here. To make ourselves a name. You know, to who? You know, okay, for the people who follow them. Everyone's going to remember us. And we can all live here. And we don't have to be scattered abroad. We'll all live here together. Problem is, God said, what'd he say? He said, populate the earth abundantly and multiply in it. The whole earth, not just the valley. He didn't say, go ye down to the Tigris and Euphrates and everybody live there forever. He said, populate the earth. And the earth is not just that one spot. As you're going to see it as you continue on the story, that is the point. If you don't catch it here, God makes it clear later on. Okay? So they're supposed to be scattered all over the whole earth. And what's going on? Nimrod and his cronies that he's leading this with have a different plan. We have a different plan, you know? We don't like God's plan. We all want to stay right here. Why should we all venture off somewhere else when we got everything we need right here? Which is, you know, I can see thinking like that, but you got to remember God said, and this is probably not the only good spot on planet Earth to live. You know, you got Carroll County, Illinois. Really? If the governor didn't run this state, it'd be a great area, you know? All right. Hope. Just joking now, okay? Okay? Anyway, okay, he says that you need to multiply and cover the whole earth here, okay? And making a plan to stay in this land of Shinar is not obeying God. I mean, it's just pure and simple. It's not obeying God here. You know, they are supposed to scatter over the earth, and what do they say? Let's do this so that lest we do get scattered. If we stay right here, it's good. Otherwise, we'll be scattered all over the whole earth. So they're specifically saying, we're not going to spread out. You know, at the end of verse 4, we don't like that plan. We want to stay right here. That's what that's all about here. Make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be scattered abroad over the face of the earth. So we don't want to do that. And so while they're building this city, they're also working on this tower that will reach into heaven. And a lot of people want to camp on the tower. Okay, the tower. All right. The tower is not intended to reach all the way up to heaven where God is. I mean, I've heard, when I was a kid, that's the way it was presented to me in my Sunday school class. They were going to build a tower to heaven and try to unseat God. wow, as I'm a little kid, I go, wow, just thinking how tall that tower must have been. If they're going to build it, where is heaven? Are they in the right spot to make it all the way up to where God is? Maybe should they be over a little further east? And then they show this circular tower going up, this great big thing. Okay, the heaven here, when they say heaven, they're not referring about where God lives. They're not talking about that at all. It's not even intended to reach the heaven that they call outer space, because outer space is called heaven, because where are the sun, moon, and stars? They're in the heavens, aren't they? They're in heaven. Okay, that's one of the heavens too. If they're trying to reach outer space, think about this. Why are you building it on a plane and not on some tall mountain? Should you get a head start on this? Get on a tall mountain? Okay, these people are not stupid. Okay, they're not trying to build a tower up into outer space or to heaven, to God, or to God's throne. They're not trying to do that. What's they're trying to do? Remember, they want to make a name for themselves. Okay, it's just like right now, everybody, over the past 30 years, I don't even know what the world's tallest building is right now, because different countries keep building the world's tallest building so they can make a name for themselves that they have the world's tallest building. Okay, I don't know what the latest is now, but there's something about, hey, we build a great thing and it makes a name for ourselves. That's still around today, and that's what they're doing back there. They're building a tower that will reach up in the sky and be able to be seen from a long distance away. That's all it is. Okay, they're building a tower that goes up in the sky here, and the sky, heaven means atmosphere also. That's one of the words for, heaven is applied to the atmosphere. In Genesis 1:1 it says, in the beginning God created the heavens, plural, and the earth. So we got more than one thing called heaven. Not just, we always associate it with God. All right? In the Old Testament, yes, there is some of that, but most of the time when it uses the word heavens, it's talking about the created things that God made, the created heavens, plural, the outer space, and then the space between the sun, moon, and stars. One is the sky around the earth. That's one heaven. And then what's above that? And once you get out of the atmosphere, that's outer space. That's the other heaven. And so God created these two heavens and the earth. The whole idea is here's what he created. All right. And the people wanted to build a tower that sticks up into the sky. That's what it is. What kind of tower? Who knows? Here we are again. Who knows? But what do they always say is they say, well, it must have been a ziggurat. Not a cigarette, but a ziggurat. Okay. Or ziggurat, if we want to spell it out there. A ziggurat. Okay. Only in that part of the world can you find these structures, and they're all decayed and falling apart. Anyway, we do know that there was a ziggurat, major big tower type thing in was Ur of the Chaldees, where Abraham was. That's one of the only thing anybody can say about Ur of the Chaldees just about is that, well, they had a giant ziggurat there. All right. And so what does a ziggurat look like here? Okay, they still have ruins of this ziggurat. I don't know if it was really from Abraham's day. I'm sure they say it is. But ziggurat, okay, not much of a tower, is it? That's because most of it's gone. Okay, all right. And you can see that's not being that wide. There's the stairway over there. You can like 4 guys abreast can walk up that stair. So that shows you how wide that is. I'm telling you it is because I've seen other pictures. Okay. So you can tell it's not really that giant of a structure there. And so you're not going to go very high with that small of a base. Okay. But restoration to it, as you can see right there, it looks like it's fairly new here because they've restored it. Now, here's what they guess it looked like. I don't know what they based that on, but that's what they guess it looked like. So that's not really that tall of a tower, but let's, think about it. You're living way back when there are no such thing as skyscrapers, and you're standing down here at the ground thinking of where the top is. That's pretty tall, okay, when you think about it. Okay, so you're looking at, it's probably 2, 4, 6. That might be maybe as tall as a 10-story building by the time you get to the thing at the very top. It might be that tall. So that's a pretty good size thing. It'd certainly be able to be seen from a long ways away. And this is back where nobody had a home that's more than 2 floors. And so, that's a pretty big building. Okay, pretty tall structure they've got here. Okay, now, was the Tower of Babel a ziggurat like this? They don't know. It's as good a guess as any. All right. But that's what a ziggurat is. If you ever hear somebody, if you see that written down, well, they built a ziggurat. Okay. That's the ziggurat up there. Yeah, you see the word. There it is. If you ever see ziggurat, that's what that is. Okay. So anyway, nobody knows what this Tower of Babel was going to be because it didn't ever get finished. Maybe that was it. It didn't ever got finished, okay? All right, that's an so it couldn't have been that one. But, it didn't get finished. Remember that. It didn't get finished. The tower is never completed, okay? And so what does God think about them preferring their own plan here to his? They're out building this city, building this tower. Verse 5. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language, and this is what they began to do, and now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Okay, first off, God doesn't need to come down and see what's going on. It's sort of like, was he up in heaven? He had no idea what was taking place, and maybe an angel brought him a message and thought, hey, you need to check this out, and so he decided to come on down and see it. No, that's not it. What the phrase here, why it says this, it wants to make sure that we understand is that God saw what they were doing. Because God is everywhere. So how does he come down, to see this? Now, if he takes on a physical form, okay, that's restricted in time and space, like he did when he shows up with the two angels with Abraham. Okay, well, all right, then you would come over there, and he would, in that way. But anyway, the main thing, the point is to let you know is that God was very much aware of what was going on, saying, all right, guys, this isn't good. That's what he's doing. He's coming to check it out here. And he responds with it. They're one people. They got the same language. And then, this is what they're doing. They're uniting to what? To oppose what I told them to do. And if they keep this up, they'll just continue to build upon that same attitude. When it says there nothing will be impossible for them, that doesn't mean nothing's going to be impossible. If they want to fly now, they can fly. No, it's not that type of impossible. What he's saying there is once they're united like this, nothing is going to stop them to continue down this path. They're already starting a little bit of rebellion right here, not doing what I said to do. And if we don't stop them, if we just let them go, then they will continue down that road. And where will they go? Life will get worse and worse and worse. And next thing you know, we're back to where we were before the flood. Totally unchecked rebellion against God. They'll pursue things that I say they shouldn't do. If we let them get away with it, then they're going to go do everything under the sun, and we're not going to do that. We've done that once. We're not going to do it again. So that's kind of a hint there when he says, nothing they purpose to do will be impossible for them. Whatever these sinful people want to do, they will pursue it. That's what he means by that. Okay? And because they're one people with one language, they can unify to oppose God, to ignore God's commandments here. And that's what they're doing here. Because everybody knows we're supposed to be scattering across the earth here. If lawlessness goes unchecked, it gets worse, right? It just gets worse. And that's what God's talking about right here. They haven't been around that long. We're only in the second generation after the flood. And now they're united in a major project against me. And that's what this is, because they're out to glorify themselves rather than give God the glory and do what he says and be fruitful, multiply, and worship him. There's nothing in here about let's build a temple to God, or God's not even in the discussion, you notice? That we're seeing, it's going to get worse. And what are we seeing right now in our own country? And it's with lawlessness goes unchecked, it gets worse, doesn't it? All right? So, God's saying, no, we're not doing that. You guys hadn't hardly been here very long, and you're already going to take off and head that direction. We're not doing it. We're going to stop that. And that's what his plan is. Verse 7. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech. Well, that ought to get things pretty interesting. Can you imagine that? We all right now can speak to each other. That when we got up to leave here, none of us spoke the same language. When you're like, what is going on with you? Why are you talking like that? And you're like, la, 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 back at me. What do you mean? And you're going, don't. And we're both doing that at each other. And you're like, you can't believe you can't understand me, can you? What a frustrating and maddening thing. Now, that doesn't mean every single person spoke a different language, but there would be different groups of people that spoke different languages. And so, yeah, that sure disrupted things for sure here. And so let's go down and confuse their language so they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Well, you take away the workforce, that'll stop the city right there. Okay? Therefore, its name was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the earth. Okay? Let us go down. Now we got, us. Who's us? Let us go down. And then, like when I was a little kid, well, maybe he's talking to the angels, you know. Does he need the angels to go down and look at this? Is that who the us is? God and the angels? Probably not. And while this certainly supports the idea of the Trinity, since he's talking to himself in the plural, Father, Son, Holy Spirit would be us. That might be in there. I mean, I don't want to throw that out. But the real thing here is we got to admit that this is a type of formal speech that is still used today by leadership of countries and people groups. It's called plural of majesty. And if you grew up watching movies of King Arthur and all these days, and the king sits on his throne and he always speaks, and we will do this, and he's talking about himself. He refers to himself in the plural. Even our own president, not any of our presidents, always say we when they're talking about their plans, that individual's plan for our country. It's always we. It's we. It's we. Okay? When it's really he's talking about I. All right? It's called a plural of majesty. It's been popular forever of using the plural of majesty. And so, God being the supreme ruler of all, you can't get any more majestic than that, and using the plural of majesty. Okay, and it could fit in with the Trinity as well. Okay, so we see here in John, we see it we start off our Bible pretty much with it in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, when God says what? He says, let us make man in our image. Okay, that knocks out the angels, because if we're not made in the image of angels, it's always an image of God. And so plural of majesty is what it's talking about here. Okay, so God's response to this rebellion is what? It's to confuse their language, okay? You can't get united if you can't understand each other. That's a pretty good plan. Pretty good lesson to remember, even if you do speak the same language. You cannot be united if you don't understand each other. So work at understanding each other so that you can be united. There's one thing to get positive out of this thing. Maintain unity by understanding each other. And so, anyway, he's going to confuse their languages. He's going to make a whole bunch of them now, so they can't communicate. How many languages? Who knows again? We don't have any idea. How many languages he had to suddenly put on this people? We don't know what the population was. It's a lot of people. That means they're building a city. He's going to confuse their languages, and then whatever languages, however many there were, all today's current languages came from that. And if you ever have taken the history of the English language course or something like that, they'll take you all the way back to basically 4 groups of languages on planet Earth that they say all the rest of the languages came out of. Do they really know that? I don't know. But anyway, that's what you see, a chart like that, and it'll break it up. We're in the Indo-European group. English is. That means India is in our same family, which is totally different from English, isn't it? But anyway, today there are around 6,500 languages on planet Earth that we are aware of. Because it's always surprising when they stumble across another remote tribal group in some jungle in Irian Jaya or somewhere like that they've never run across these people before, and they talk a totally different language. So, in the past 50 years, they've discovered about 800 languages nobody knew existed, all because they're remote little groups that lived to themselves and had nothing to do with anybody else. And so there are that many languages right now in the world, and many of them, they fall into these language groups, like we are what? English is what? Romance language. You ever remember hearing that when you were in school? Latin-based language, Romance languages. What are the Romance languages? English isn't a Romance language. Excuse me. English isn't. English is from Latin. French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and the 5th one is Romanian. Did you know Romanian is the same family group as those? Those are the Romance languages. English isn't. Okay. And there's about another 20 other lesser languages I've never even heard of. They're in the Romance languages, because there are little pockets in Europe that we're not familiar with that still speak oddball little languages, like Romansh, which is another one. Romansh is in Switzerland. Okay, they speak 3 or 4 languages in there. Romansh. It's sort of like Romanian, but not. Okay, the Roma Gypsies speak their own language. Saying they're in that category also, and they're all across Europe. All right, okay, we're off on a dog leg here. Anyway, so however many languages that appeared at the Tower of Babel, all of our current languages we speak today came out of that. Okay, and we can see how quickly language can change, because you just got the English language. The colonization of the Caribbean happened what? 500 and something years ago. And look how different the English is when you go to different parts of the Caribbean. Sandy can attest there. When I was in Trinidad, I couldn't understand anybody. And they're speaking English, all right? And so I was in London once, and I couldn't understand the lady behind the counter. She was going,